Alright, hey guys, and welcome to my review of No Time to Die. So this is the latest James Bond film, and man, I think it's pretty good. It's definitely not what do you call this? It stands in between the classic James Bond and the more modernized version of James Bond. And then there's this whole other very rough and tough version that Daniel Craig has introduced. And what I mean by that is if we go back to the earlier Sean Connery movies, it has a very classic and slow paced feel to it. It doesn't have a lot of heavy action scenes. It focuses more on in the interaction of James Bond with the people around him and him going around meeting people, preparing stuff, all for the big fight in the end where he gets caught by the villain, gets interrogated, somehow escapes, and then defeats the villain in the end. And this cliche has been sort of given throwbacks to in the recent installation of Bond. Because by now we know that that's just so James Bond. Like whenever people talk about the villain explaining their evil plan and the spy escaping, because the villain doesn't kill them off, it's definitely a James Bond thing. Like we all know that. So a lot of, I feel, moments in previous films have been given some sort of homage to in this, and they do take specific scenes as well, I believe, where he stands and shoots in like a tunnel, and he what do you call this, runs out in the streets to open fire. There's a few different scenes that I feel that are quite what do you call this, like, and reminiscent into previous installations that I've watched. So I've watched the Sean Connery Bond. I believe I watched Roger Moore, and then I believe I watched Pierce Brosnan. And Pierce Brosnan really brought in something whole, like a whole other level of charisma to James Bond. And he really made James Bond the super spy with all the gadgets and the gears and the good looks and the charisma. And while that was a great thing for audiences, it is not so much true to the original story by Ian Fleming, because Ian Fleming's James Bond is actually about a rather simple and boring and ordinary looking spy to whom extraordinary and interesting things happen to. And that's literally the simplest way I can put in Fleming's, uh, you know, uh, like sort of his model of the character James Bond. So when what do you call this, the earlier installations happened, I believe it was a little more true to what Ian Fleming's idea was. And then of course Ian Fleming is no longer with us, but we did get a huge modernization of his character when it came to Pierce Brosnan. And Pierce Brosnan's Bond was great for audiences. It sold a lot of tickets. It became super exciting. It became like the number one sort of action movie at the time. And James Bond was not entirely supposed to be an action film. It was supposed to be, as I said, a spy who to whom things happen to. And yes, he does have some really dramatic villain. But I guess it's also possible that back in the day they were just not capable of the action that we are able to perform today with all technology that we have in Hollywood. And on top of that, we must also consider that this film is competing with modern day sort of action and what do you call this, sort of thriller, spy gadgets, all of these sorts of elements in today's movies. And if James Bond really went back to his classic roots, it may not really be able to compete in terms of having the right pace and the right tone and all of these things. So that's my thoughts first of all, and I want to clear that up with what I really know and think about James Bond. So as I said, this movie is actually the in-betweener. It really balances the high octane action to keep up with the latest movies. It does it really, really well. The action sequences are amazing. What do you call this? The acting and the characters and the performances and the interactions with each other, and also the little subtle moments that they have, actually doing spy work and all of that, are also really impressive. It's just that it's not as slow paced as Casino Royale, which had a much better story, by the way. This one has a massive story, it's just that it tries to do a little too many things in one. And don't get me wrong, a lot of films actually try to achieve multiple things in their plot, but don't get any of it done right. This film, on the other hand, actually does a lot of things pretty well. It's just that I feel it didn't need to include so many, so many different points and plots, and instead it could have just stuck to what it was trying to do. But regardless, looking at the entire arc of Daniel Craig's James Bond, it is brilliant. It's definitely a complete story in its own arc, but it's not the greatest, most interesting story in the world because there's no real sense of mystery to this spy movie. Like you don't really seem to need, like super international what do you call this MI6 intelligence to solve some of these things because a lot of the time things get solved by themselves. And what I mean is that it's oftentimes Bond just runs into the right place with the right villain, and the villain actually does tell Bond most of what he's going to do. And that did happen in the last two films, I believe, with him finding what is this what's his name? uh Blofeld, right? Ernst Stavro Blofeld or something. Yeah, he finds Blofeld, and then of course, before Blofeld, there was another guy, in what do you call this? Yeah, I forgot the other guy's name, but he's a former MI6 agent as well. The villains do really tell him their plans, and in this one too, he does just run up to Lucifer Safin, played by Remy Malik, and also sort of just gets to know most of it. But at the same time, he does do a lot of investigation in this compared to the previous films, because when he does run into the whole Spectre arc, Blofeld just in the end does capture him and is completely helpless. And in this film too, he does get sort of captured, but he's not completely helpless. But at the same time, I do have my issues with it. I'll get to that in a bit. So, as for the plot itself regarding No Time to Die, it starts off with James actually enjoying some, retirement for like the third time, I believe. I think he's retired thrice in three different films. The first one he got shot and retired. Um, and then I think in the next one what did he do actually in the last film? Was he actually working? No, I think it was like a continuation or something like that. Anyway, I think it's like he's attempted to retire thrice, from what I remember, something like that. So in this one, he's in peaceful retirement together with what do you call this, Madeline Swan, and Dr. Madeline Swan and him all of a sudden get assaulted by these unidentified assassins. And it all starts off with Bond actually visiting Vesper's grave. And as he visits the grave blows up. And he starts to suspect Madeline that this all has something to do with Spectre, and his sort of PTSD kicks in, and he goes into full defense mode. And it comes to a scene where Madeline and James Bond are in a bulletproof car getting shot at by like six or seven assassins, and Bond just refuses to help Madeline. He just leaves the car parked there while the what do you call this assassin is trying to break into the car, and Madeline begs him that that she's innocent, this is not her doing and whatever. And Bond says, okay, fine, he'll help, and then he just goes full throttle into super spy mode, and he just beats the crap out of everyone, escapes, but he ditches Madeline Swan, telling her, that's it, this is the end of it, I'm going to break up with you. And he breaks up with her. And not too long after that, he actually goes to investigate what's happening, in this whole. Oh, sorry, he actually gets approached by Felix Leiter to help him to assist the CIA in investigating on this kind of new super terrorist that they're trying to track and whatever, which is Safin, but they don't really know about him yet. So what they're actually, after is this sort of bioweapon, and they believe it's linked to this Obruchev, who they don't really know much about yet, but they do know it has something to do with this Spectre meeting that is about to be held. So James Bond actually meets up with Paloma, who's played by Ana de Armas, who me and my wife, we called her 3 weeks training because that's the best part we remembered about her. She's apparently a CIA who claims to have 3 weeks training, but no, she's a well-trained CIA who assists James Bond to clear up a sort of a Spectre party. Shortly after Valdo Obruchev actually releases some kind of a virus that kills everyone in the area. So all Spectre agents die inside there, but it turns out that that virus was actually meant to kill James Bond and not affect Spectre agents. However, Valdo Obruchev was told to sort of re-engineer the virus to kill Spectre agents only, and this turns the entire plot against Blofeld, who is the head of Spectre, and still running Spectre operations, although he is in captivity under M's what do you call this? Like he's, I don't know, some secure facility, prison or whatever. So yeah, James Bond then later on goes to find out that he and Leiter are actually being played by this other agent, Logan Ash, and Logan Ash actually kills Leiter and leaves Bond to die, but Bond somehow survives. He escapes this huge ship, and then he goes to find M and tells M that this is all M's fault, and then we find out that M is the one that told Valdo Obrashev to design this virus in the first place, and it's not actually a biochemical weapon, it's actually nanobots. And how they work is that they are given a designated DNA to target, and they can travel from person to person harmlessly until they find their designated target, and then eliminate that target by infecting them with their nanovirus or whatever. So yeah, and then of course James meets Nomi in between. Nomi is the new 007. She's not just any what do you call this spy. She's actually 007. And James Bond does not have his title as 007 at this moment since he's no longer working for M. But he is doing his own investigations. So the interesting thing is that I find Nomi a decent character. She did in no way overshadow or overpower James Bond. She in no way was that sort of what do you call this, like it's like trying to take over the role of James Bond or anything like that. That there's really no like some people they're worried that of course it's going to be a whole new black woman replacing white guy in the role and whatever, but it's not really that. It's just a little like story between this new 007 who is Nomi, who takes Bond's place while he's not around. And at first, it seems like a bit of a competition, but actually, no, James Bond is just too good for Nomi. He knows things, he knows how to go about his work, he's very experienced, he's super good at what he does, and they both have really good fighting skills, and most of the time they actually work together and they do complement each other. But I feel that Nomi doesn't really do a lot of the heavy lifting that James Bond does, and it's probably done to give James Bond some kind of light. But they could have shown Nomi doing something I feel exceptional that Bond does not. Because the only thing that I have is that Nomi is like the younger version of James Bond, right? She's like the new 007, but we don't really see anything special or unique about her. Like she doesn't do anything differently or better than Bond. Bond seems to do everything better than Nomi as far as I watch, from what I watch from the film. So I wish they'd given Nomi some sort of a highlight just to tell that, well, these are the new tricks from the new guns who have joined MI6. But we don't get to see any of that. So like even Bond has this like the cool watch that Q gives him, but Nomi doesn't really have anything special. She doesn't like, oh, this is some new tech or something that I got. No, she doesn't have anything. But she's always there to help Bond when she needs to, and that's pretty nice. So, right after he manages to convince M that this whole thing is going southwards, M actually reassigns him to go and investigate on what's happening. So before this whole investigation takes place, he actually does meet Dr. Madeline and finds out that Dr. Madeline is actually visiting Blofeld as his psychotherapist. What a brilliant idea by M to put a person who has ex-Spectre connections with the head of Spectre to actually give him therapy. And Madeline is actually given the virus to kill Blofeld by Safin, and she does it. She takes the virus, but she doesn't end up killing Blofeld because she feels that it's not the right thing to do. But Bond touches her just before she leaves, and Bond touches Blofeld to try to just threaten him, and that transfers the virus from Bond to Blofeld, and Blofeld dies. So it's not, there's not too many jumping around of viruses. It's not a very complicated movie. I think that simplicity is quite nice. They kept it very simple, very straightforward, and the story in itself is like it's doing a lot of things. There's a lot to the story. It's very deep, and I like that. But I feel that certain things could have trimmed, like certain edges could have been trimmed, like maybe have better moments with more beloved characters. And Paloma was great, don't get me wrong, but she didn't really she wasn't useful besides for a single action sequence. You get what I mean? Like they could have used Paloma a little more maybe towards the end or something to help him blow up this entire huge facility that has like what, like a dozen guards or something, which doesn't make any sense because it has like 100 guards actually, to be honest. I think inside there, but James Bond just kills every single one of them, barely gets scratched. Maybe takes a one or two bullets, which is completely non-lethal. And Nomi doesn't really help him. Nomi escapes by just taking care of Madeline and the biggest plot twist in the story, which is that Madeline actually has a daughter, and it's apparently the daughter of James Bond and Madeline. So I don't know why Madeline actually tells James that it's not yours, it's not your daughter or something like that early on, but later James does find out that it is his daughter. So anyway, after being reassigned on the mission, he goes to find Madeline and the daughter, and he has to get them out of there because there's some agents who are after him. And then yeah, she eventually gets taken by what do you call this, Safin's team, and then Bond has to go and get some help, and then Nomi actually decides to help Bond, and they work together to go into this huge facility that's actually mass producing the virus. And they find Obruchev, they find the virus, they find Safin, they take out the entire facility, and then Nomi, takes Madeline and James's daughter to safety. And James actually solos the remaining of the mission, which is he has to open these blast doors because they're going to blow up an entire island, which is full of the virus, to destroy the virus. And if he doesn't open those blast doors, the missiles from MI6 will not, breach the facility to actually hit the virus and will just bounce off the shields. So James has to stay in the facility long enough to open the shields and then escape. But on his way out, he actually gets attacked in one last attempt by the villain. Well, guess what? That's the cliche. And the villain actually tells him, actually poisons him with the virus that is specifically meant for Madeline and her daughter. So as a result, James knows he will never be able to meet them, and the blast doors start closing again. So he goes back to open the blast doors one more time, and then seals himself shut inside a vault and tells Q to connect him to Madeline and his daughter just to say them his last goodbyes, and dies to close the arc of his James Bond. So I feel the story itself, as I said, was really beautiful. I just feel that certain edges could have been trimmed. Certain characters that were introduced had really like decent moments. Like Paloma, Ana de Armas was really amazing in her action sequence, and she sort of had some good chemistry playing as some sort of a junior to James Bond. And I feel that they should have used her towards the end, probably, having her step in for the fact that Felix Leiter is no longer there. She wants to come and help him because he was a good friend of Leiter or something like that, some sort of, to close the loop in itself. But they didn't really do that. Obruchev dies by getting sort of this is Sparta by Nomi, and I mean, I don't know. All of a sudden, she decides to kill him, like just because he pulls some kind of a racist threat against her, saying that I can build a virus that can wipe out your entire race or something. Then she just this is Sparta's him. I mean, like, we get it. You want to make Obruchev a hated character. They gave him a bunch of quips and one-liners as well. So I already hated him for that. But I mean, they could have done some certain scenes a little bit better. Regardless, the reason I'm judging this movie in such detail is because I actually like it. I think it's a great Bond film. I think it's a great conclusion to Daniel Craig's James Bond. And I think IMDb's rating of 7.5 is pretty accurate, if I may say so. I think this movie can be considered a 7, maybe an 8. It's really, really what do you call this? Sort of a complete Bond film, if I may say so. He doesn't have too many gadgets. And I think Daniel Craig's Bond never really dealt too much with the gadgets. He always went for something very low profile. He always had only one or two things ever used. Um, and I wish they showed a little bit more about how he keeps his equipment, how he handles his, like, his vests, and some sort of suiting up scenes. Certain things like that would have made things a little more iconic for the finale. But they really just focused on Daniel Craig doing awesome stuff, which I have really no complaints about. It's amazing. So overall, as for the acting of the rest of the characters, Ana de Armas had a very small role, so I can't really judge her for that. She just did one thing, and she did it decently well. Dr. Madeline Swan does her role by reprising. Sorry, Leah Seydoux reprises her role as Madeline and does it pretty well. I find Lashana Lynch as Nomi decent. I just wish that, as I said, something unique came out from her besides just being a shadow to Bond. I think a little too much. Ralph Fiennes is a great actor, and he did his part as M really well. He was a little more, I felt, authoritative in this, and I sort of like that. Ben Whishaw as Q did his part. They try to, they try to show that he's actually gay and he's waiting for his boyfriend or something like that. But besides just insinuating that, they never really showed his boyfriend or anything happening after that. Naomi Harris reprises her role once again as Moneypenny, and she also has a very, very minor role, barely of significance. Tanner is in the background somewhere. Felix Leiter actually dies in this, and that's one sad little scene to conclude his friendship with James Bond. Um, Blofeld dies from the virus. Christoph Waltz is just captivating any scene that he's in, but he's a little bit irritating in this, and I think that's meant to be so that he irritates Bond and irritates the audience as well. Logan Ash was the only thing that is a little bit unique in this. Like he had a very small role. Sorry, he had a very big role, but he had very few scenes. So I feel that we couldn't really get much of him, and we didn't really see him do enough in any sort of way. We actually got more of Valdo Obrushev, who like almost did nothing besides design the virus initially and just talk crap for the rest of the film. And that's literally what it does. We do see this guy called Primo, who they label him as Cyclops because he is one-eyed, and he comes back as a returning villain in 2 or 3 scenes, but he's nowhere near threatening as the villains we've seen before that was like Batista or Jaws or anything like that. Those are like really big hulky villains. Even this guy is not as big and hulky or whatever, but they could have made him do something a little more unique. Like just being a Cyclops alone, I felt was like, okay, so what? He doesn't do anything that special compared to any other villain, so they could have made him stand out. So yeah, and Remy Malik especially, I kept him for last is because I feel that he was not a very good villain, to be honest. He didn't really do much. He just has a scarred looking face. He just talks really soft, and that's pretty much all he does. He doesn't really do anything unique as a villain in any way. Not to say that any of the other recent James Bond villains were that impressive, but I mean, I think Blofeld was pretty threatening in his own way because he was sort of this mysterious mastermind, and the guy before him was like a tech genius. Whereas Safin doesn't really do anything. He's just a guy, honestly, who has this plan and this scheme to want to take revenge on Spectre because they killed his family when he was young, and use the virus to sort of take control over the world and prove that all these spies and assassins are actually what do you call this, up to no good, and he feels that he might as well just take over the world to the basically the usual stuff is what James Bond and M say to each other, and that's pretty much true. It's very usual, which is what it was. So I feel that it's an underwhelming villain, but this film is really all about James Bond, and yeah, that's about it. So here is my rating for you. Let me pull it up. Let me pull up a text here, and that's gonna be. I think you can probably guess this one. There we go. A 7 out of 10. I bet you did not expect this because I've not given a 7 out of 10 for many films, especially not recently. And honestly, there's not been that many good films to even deserve such a rating. But I feel that No Time to Die is a really, really good Bond film. It is a film that will be remembered, and it is a great conclusion to the arc of Daniel Craig's James Bond. And I feel that it'll be something that will be rewatched. Definitely, definitely. And probably as an entire arc, because this movie does not stand by itself, like on its own 2 feet in any way. Because the story itself relies on on the previous installations. But even if you don't know the complete story, this one does have great action sequences, as I said. But the supporting cast, I feel, just did not stand out as much as certain other movies perhaps. And it's not like, oh, remember Safin from James Bond and how scary that guy was, or how dangerous of a villain he was, or what kind of plan he had. No one is going to say that. No one's going to say that. People are going to talk about Blofeld. People might not talk about Leiter either because they all of a sudden build some sort of a relationship with Bond just to kill him in this film, I think, just so that we feel a little bit for him. But it was a little bit difficult considering how long it's been since the last films came, so I can't really remember much between him and Leiter either. And I only think they had like 2 films of relationship. And as for the rest of the characters as well, it's like perhaps M, this guy as M, will definitely be remembered. I wish Nomi was given something different. Madeline Swan didn't really do anything useful. I feel that she was just a weight on James Bond's shoulders, as much as it pains me to say that. That's what she was. Valdo Obrushev was pretty much the Jar Jar Binks of this film, if you ask me. And Ana de Armas Paloma was great, as I said, but I wish they actually gave her character more time on screen, because she would have been, a decent character and a unique person to keep to the end, because she was the only CIA member that was in contact with Bond after Felix Leiter died. So, yep, that's it from me. I think you guys should definitely watch No Time to Die. It's a brilliant film, and if you can watch it in cinemas, please do, because once you miss this chance, trust me, you'll regret it because of just how amazing the action is. As for the sound engineering and the music, I think it's brilliant. The chase scenes, the cars, the fighting, the action, all had amazing music. The you can really feel and hear the engines and the thuds and the punches and the shots. It's all very crisp and clear, and I really like that. And as for the cinematography, need I say more? Like, it's a James Bond film. They really have these big, beautiful wide-angle shots that really make you feel the weight and the massiveness, the what do you call this? Like, the fact that the stakes are there, the stakes are high. All of this is gonna, like get destroyed if the spy doesn't do something about it. Like all of this world exists around us, but we don't realize that all of this is gonna just go to crumbles if someone like James Bond doesn't do his job to protect it. And it's just that scale that they show in the film, just in terms of the way they lay out the image, the way they detail out certain moments and scenes, and also the depth that they give to the moments when James Bond actually goes around investigating or meets up with someone, and also just in general how relaxed he is as a spy because of how experienced he is, and how much his experience definitely outshines all the other characters, because he's clearly the most experienced spy on screen in this entire film. So yeah, that's really really cool. And yep, that's it for me. I think it's fair enough to say that No Time to Die was brilliant. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.